Good afternoon to everyone. I want to thank you for inviting me to join with you today. And just by quick background, I'm in my last year of 12 years as a member of the California State Legislature. Before that, I was nearly 24 years on the Pasadena City Council. As a council member and mayor, I served 20 years at the Burbank Airport as airport commissioner and president for 10. And so I've been in public policy for a long time. During my time in the Assembly, I've had the honor of being in a variety of leadership positions. I was the majority leader, appropriations chair, and also chair of utility and energy. 5 years in that spot, and having had an opportunity to be part of public policy through some very trying times in the state, challenges that we found ourselves up against, had an opportunity to deal with a lot of different issues. And so that is kind of my background, and I look forward to being able to share some thoughts with you today. And I'd also like to thank the California Special Districts Association for inviting me to be here today to talk about climate resilience. I'm also honored that you would have me speak, and hopefully the background and information I share will be helpful. California, as we know, is uniquely positioned to lead the charge in the fight against climate change due to its unparalleled beauty and unique economics. It is my firm belief that through bold, visionary leadership, we can overcome even the greatest challenges the environment faces. Over the years, I've had the privilege of spearheading numerous legislative initiatives aimed at bolstering our state's resilience to the impacts of climate change. From expanding renewable energy resources to investing in sustainable infrastructure, each of these efforts has brought us one step closer to achieving our shared goals. But our work is far from over. As we confront the realities of changing climate, we must remain steadfast in our commitment to action. We must continue to push the boundaries of what is possible, to seek out innovative solutions, and to forge new partnerships in pursuit of a brighter, more sustainable future. Before going any further, I wanted to, by addressing the elephant in the room, that this is the economic situation that we're in right now as Californians. The budget is tight, and so we're going to have to navigate through that. I understand the importance of ensuring legislation that we pass focuses on creating a safer and cleaner California. My time in the legislature has been during a budget surplus, and the legislature has made historic investments to better our state. Unfortunately, that is not the case today. Today, we focus on the recovery of California's economy and protecting our investments. We are committed to focus on preserving our accomplishments and ensuring our budget reflects our values. Leadership has come together and focused on bipartisan solutions through early budget actions. We are possibly facing a $73 billion budget deficit. Now, that's the high end. And if we get to that point, that is a really hard set of choices that we're going to have to make. As a result of this budget deficit, there have been efforts to review past budgets to look into potential cost savings. In the early action agreements, we are looking to help reduce the budget deficit by around $17.3 billion. Just this last Thursday, the California Assembly helped pass a section of this agreement totaling $1.6 billion. This budget deficit is important to address because without doing so, many climate protections we have fought so hard to ensure may be reduced back in an effort to save the state money. In the governor's January budget proposal, $6.7 billion of general fund solutions were proposed to face reductions, delays, or shifts into other funds that relate to climate. Some of those shifts include $38.1 million reduction to electric vehicle programs, $100 million reduction to programs with indirect benefits for fuel treatment in regards to wildfire resilience, $475 million reduction to the Climate Innovation Program for 2024-2025. I'm happy to say I've been supportive of the goals and initiatives CalSTART has had over the last few years. Over the years, I've run many bills as the chair of Utilities and Energy and passed important bills as the chair of Appropriations. And I and other legislators have committed to climate resilience and putting the climate first in California. Now I want to take a moment to discuss some of the bills I've authored and supported to better our great state. Allowed the state board to establish an embodied carbon trading system, and that's AB 43, which was introduced and passed last year, as defined, and would make it applicable to developers and building material manufacturers. That was signed by the governor, and that has been chaptered. AB 2446 in 2022 required the California Air Resources Board to develop a framework for measuring and reducing carbon emissions associated with new building construction. That bill was also signed by the governor. AB 1328 in 2019 required that air pollution data about oil and gas wells be made public and is submitted to the Air Resources Board, also signed by the governor. Along with my own bills, there was also major legislation and budget proposals I was happy to help play a small part in by approving them through appropriations. Some of those included SB 253 Wiener in 2023. It was a bill that helped move through appropriations, which I was happy to do. This bill required any partnership, corporation, LLC, or other U.S. business entity with revenues over $1 billion that does business in California to publicly report their annual greenhouse gas emissions. AB 30 by Assemblymember Ward. Another bill that I helped pass through appropriations. This bill helped configure existing atmospheric river research, mitigation, and forecasting to better understand future trends related to climate change. I wanted to really quickly just touch on a couple of other things that are very important. In my first year, we were able to pass, as chair of Utility and Energy, a very important goal-setting bill, and that was SB 100, where the goal was to establish 100% carbon-free on our grid by 2045. As we move forward, looking at cleaning and making sure that our grid is getting to renewable energy goals, we're going to have to continue to procure clean, efficient power to be put on the grid. And as such, we were supportive of offshore wind development, lithium and geothermal development, because obviously as we're looking at the opportunity to have battery life extend beyond a couple of days, especially if we're dealing with the need to have additional power during crisis and evacuations of communities because of wildfire impacts or other natural disasters. Having power to go beyond a few hours to a few days is a game changer. And so as we look to improve on our opportunity for having long duration storage power batteries, this type of effort in the lithium development and the down in the southern part of our state becomes very important. Infrastructure development, new transmission lines, as we continue to make sure that we have clean renewable energy on the grid, having transmission lines to effectively and efficiently move it around the state becomes very, very critical. And we've had a couple of bills this year and just recently in utility and energy to do such investment. The other important part, in addition to resiliency, is resource allocation. As we've seen in recent years from 2020 until probably 2021, but 2020 was the time when we had the grid was over-impacted. Climate change was obviously causing there to be not just wildfires, but catastrophic wildfires, where the impact wasn't just on California, but the western states. And certainly through that impact, it put an enormous amount of pressure on the grid because now air conditioning units are running beyond the sunset and into the night, which is where we saw ourselves in great potential peril. And in 2020, in August, we saw that impact cause the lights or the power to fail for short periods of time, but enough to cause everyone to react and see what having blackouts will mean. And we had promised and I know the governor made this statement as well, to not ever have to be in that situation again. And so as we moved forward, we collaborated with the three energy agencies, the PUC, the CEC, and the independent system operator, getting them talking again, which was a very important thing to have happen, which that wasn't happening in an efficient way. So our planners and forecasters were collaborating more efficiently with those who are designed to put renewable power and make it available and purchase it and use it at appropriate times. So making sure that we were in a strong position to be able to have the resource to meet the needs of the consumer at times when obviously there's great strain on the resources and on the grid. We saw a couple of years ago the need to restart Diablo Canyon. We had made a commitment not to re-engage in nuclear power, but clearly as a result of climate change and the impact on the need to make sure we were meeting the resource allocation needs of the consumers became critical to do that. We negotiated a much shorter time frame from 25 years to 5 years. Federal government was involved to allow us to be able to move forward in doing certain other clean energy projects. We wanted to fast track those projects, which was part of the budget deal at that time. And those are the type of projects now that we find ourselves sort of in a squeeze play of maybe having to delay a little bit in the process. So we're hoping that doesn't become the case because we want to get to our goals and getting our procurement of clean energy power projects done sooner than later. And clearly with the growth of these catastrophic wildfires, as chair of Utility and Energy and working with the governor, we had to face a time when the largest utility in the country was moving into bankruptcy, had been declared bankruptcy, PG&E. And we had to then find a way to get that utility out of bankruptcy because if we had not, there would have been some real challenges there in terms of what that could mean to the markets and the markets impacted would then have on Southern California, Edison, and San Diego Gas and Electric. And the last thing we could have is a situation where all three utilities found themselves in a similar situation. And so we were able to, under AB 1054, create a fund that allowed for the utilities to have access to help relieve the pressure of liability where there may be causation from their power lines or other things that cause a fire, which actually leads to the legislation that prior to 1054 we were able to support SB 901, which is vegetation management, and we wanted to make sure, and again, these are bipartisan bills, so it's really a testament to the legislature coming together, recognizing the crisis, and stepping in to collaborate. And under 901, we were allocating $1 billion to brush clearance. We, under 1054, have a provision where there's now wildfire mitigation plans that have to be submitted by the utilities every year. Investment, also using ratepayer dollars, but investment to make sure lines are underground where possible, brushes cleared, and that there's improved technology around weatherization and predicting high wind events and knowing when that is important to note, but to try not to have to de-energize power lines, but to avoid, obviously, having that particular risk. That bill was allowed. The 901 was in place to make sure that the public could follow and 1054 follow along with the kind of investments that the utilities needed to make sure brush was being cleared around the poles and power lines, and undergrounding and forecasting were invested in. I will say, too, that this committee was a really tough committee. I enjoyed it a lot, but there were just so many critical elements to what the Utility and Energy Committee has oversight over, whether it's the regulatory oversight to make sure that the PUC is responding to the initiatives and policies that they're being sent and they're doing their rate making around for protecting and implementing these important policy goals that we establish, establishing policy and setting implementation climate goals to allow us to have appropriate markers out there to shoot for. The governor has also come forward with ensuring that going forward 2030, 3035, that EV, that we'll see more EVs on the road, and there's a stated goal around that. But also the committee was had importance over achieving market balance. Sometimes as we have these goals set, we want to make sure that the market can respond. We have no problem setting high goals, but I think it's also important that we have to balance and make sure that we can, that it's not creating a greater stress, or the cost associated isn't such that that cost is passed along at a high rate. As an example, as we move to de-energization, we want to make sure, and hydrogen becomes part of the conversation, it becomes important that what we do gets us to our goals without impacting on ratepayers in a place where they just can't pay the bills. And as I said before, transitioning costs associated with the decarbonization of infrastructure. And that not in any order here, but certainly at the top of all of these would be then also protecting the ratepayers. And that has been and continues to be a real important criteria for us to meet. This year, so whether we're looking at from the redwoods of Northern California to the beaches of Southern California, our state's natural beauty is unmatched across the nation. Yes, we've seen that this prosperity is threatened by the impacts of climate change, impacts that spare no community and spare no corner of our state. However, in the face of the adversity, we have also witnessed the resilience, innovation, and determination of the people of California. We've seen communities come together to rebuild in the aftermath of wildfires. Scientists work tirelessly to develop new technologies, and policymakers enact bold legislation to combat climate change. This year, I introduced Assembly Bill 2330, and it's related to wildfire preparedness activities. This bill would help speed up permitting processes for cities, counties, and special districts, and more to conduct wildfire countermeasures in areas deemed a severity fire hazard zone. I'm currently working with the League of California Cities, CSAC, RCRC, and others to ensure that CW, FW, and I know this sounds like alphabet soup, sorry about that, is able to approve the permits in a more timely manner to maintain city and county-owned lands. We're working to address the concerns of environmental groups who want to ensure that there are appropriate measures in place to protect the habitat. For example, not allowing brush clearing during mating season of a certain species. This bill is scheduled to be heard on April 23rd in Assembly Water Parks and Wildlife, and I will keep you posted as the bill moves forward. I want to express my deepest gratitude to each and every one of you for your dedication to this cause. Whether you are a policymaker, a scientist, a community leader, or simply a concerned citizen, your contributions are invaluable in our collective efforts to address climate change. Together, through innovation, collaboration, and proactive actions, we can create a sustainable future for generations to come. Thank you, and I appreciate, again, the invitation to join you today.
Assemblymember Holden, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you and the time you shared with us. It was just so helpful. Frank, you're here too, back for some closing words, so we appreciate it. I'll turn it over to you, and if you have any reminders for the group. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you to the Assembly members for joining us. It's been a really pleasure again, Megan, 4 years running for this program, and we really appreciate everyone's participation, and we'll look forward to future programs, certainly. It's been very informative and continues to be, and we appreciate your partnership, certainly. And if you have any final words, feel free, but on behalf of the University of Southern California Sol Price School of Public Policy, we thank you for attending, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.